The farm. The smooth granite of the tombstone lay cold under my hand that chilly afternoon in 1990. Faded November crabapples hung from the tree next to the grave, and a determined breeze lifted the collar of my peacoat. A jay scolded from the rhododendron, and the air smelled wintry. I stomped my feet, damp from traversing the confused, rutted lanes of the hilly country cemetery. The paths circled back around themselves, encompassing the modest markers of generations of sturdy upstate New York men and women who lay among the big-leaf hydrangea and the live forever. My fingers lingered in the grooves of her name, Louise Plimpton Schoonover, 1894 to 1982. Rest in peace, gentle soul. Aunt Louise, short and round, her pink face always wreathed in a smile, sparse white hair gathered in a net, was a remarkable part of my youth. A farmer's daughter who'd moved to town when her dad retired in 1913, she'd been my father's primary childhood caretaker. She'd shepherded him through abusive, neglectful parents, comforted him when local bullies tormented, and monitored his ups and downs with schooling. Her duty complete when he volunteered for service in World War II, she married a man she knew from Grange. Uncle Willard owned a dairy farm one town south, but no children were granted to their late-in-life union, and so my siblings and I, when we came along in the 1940s and 50s, became her de facto grandkids. She died almost a decade prior to the brisk autumn day when I located her marker. With middle age rapidly looming and my children growing more independent, I found I increasingly missed my Aunt Louise. I recalled her unmitigated joy at our mere presence, and I longed for the sweet taste of her Sunday dinner sticky buns. But most of all, I missed her wise counsel concerning matters of the land. I needed to see where she lay under that thin, stony, upstate New York soil. Sometime during the hours spent by her grave, deep in conversation with my memory of the kind woman who'd been mentor as well as great aunt, I understood why gardening, that sweet skill of producing beauty and plenty from the earth, had become more and more primal to me. Neither of my parents was wedded to the soil, and I'd wondered at the increasing importance I attached to making things grow. Over Aunt Louise's grave that afternoon, I finally made the connection between the upstate New York farm woman who loved me and my love of the land. I perceived that I am a heritage gardener. My knowledge comes to me not solely from countless classes and hours spent poring through garden books and magazines, not just from dirt-encrusted hands and the daily gleaning of the weather report, not from due diligence on the internet and chatting up those stewards of the earth more experienced than I. No, a great deal of what I know comes to me via those I've loved who have gone before. Individuals such as my grandmother Elva, whose clambering roses draped over her white picket fence, and whose cabbages thrived in neat tracks in her vegetable patch by the tilted garage. And my Uncle Frank, whose backyard held not a blade of grass, but row upon row of prize-winning vegetables. Or Grandpa Kennett's potato field out by the cow pasture in the gone-to-seed farm in which I grew to adulthood. And there are others from whom I've learned lessons, such as my great friend Paul Young, who retired from the nurseryman trade to grow 1,000 different hosta cultivars on a precious 10 acres in suburban Fairfield County, Connecticut. And my best friend Muriel, whose unique gardening skills lies in her joy at the exuberance of nature. Her abandonment of hard and fast rules of what should grow where has taught me invaluable lessons about relaxation and enjoyment. There are others who have touched my gardening life, and whose lives in turn I believe I have touched. But it was my recollections of great Aunt Louise that prompted these musings. Aunt Louise, whose cluttered dairy farm was ever host to a curious child of the 1950s, the studious little person who was me, the child who became fascinated and never forgot that hickory nuts were to be had for the taking on bright autumn days in the lane leading to her farm, or that chickens produce manure which stinks when gathered, but helps the soil to grow the most splendid flowers, or that stupendous view from her garden out across the farm pond and on to the Bristol Hills, that view that was balm to the soul of a confused college student of the 1960s. Aunt Louise, whose name I gave to my only daughter. It's important to remember. I have come, therefore, to understand that some gardening knowledge is in the genes, distilled through the patina of age. Facts, anecdotes, and knowledge at times spring unbidden to my brain. How do I understand what shade of green newly unfurling leaves should tint? What connects me so firmly to the soil? Whence comes the peace of autumn, of labors well performed? And why does my heart leap on a sunny day in January and my thoughts turn to seed catalogs? Because it's in my blood. In the gathering dusk of that long-ago November day, sleet began to pelt against my peacoat collar. I turned to retrace my steps, find my car, exit the black wrought-iron gates of Union Cemetery in Livonia, New York, and return to my middle-class suburban life. But I was changed. I knew I would someday, somehow, find a way to memorialize Aunt Louise and all the garden mentors, past and present, who by example and experience have beckoned to me. This book is for them.